met Lou back in 1995. It was October 1st, 1995. And he picked me up at the airport in his Rolls Royce and a limo. I don't know why he brought two cars, but him and Justin Timberlake met me at baggage claim. And I was like, hi, nice to meet you guys. And immediately, I loved them. I mean, Lou was this jolly guy that just you immediately felt was family, and then Justin, the cool one sitting on the baggage belt. My entry into this whole world was, it was fun. It felt very inviting.
Yeah, so our producer Matthew Ducey has been really fascinated by this story for a really long time, and he brought it to me, and I just found it to be this really interesting story that there seemed like there were a lot of other layers to. And then we talked to Lance, and the story that Lance wanted to tell was really inspiring because he wanted to be the first time where the story was actually told the right way and by the people who actually lived it. And so we really wanted to get everybody who'd been involved with every part of his life so that we could actually tell the story the way it should be told. And I think then beyond that, just the idea of this is a story that is so much wrought with truth and lies. And there's so many webs of trying to figure out whether something's fact or fiction. And I think that's such a present topic in our world right now. And it was something that I really wanted to analyze, like what makes you believe a lie, what makes you believe the truth, that kind of thing. I think that, well, a lot of it just starts with Lance. Like it was a lot about this is a story that you would want to be involved with, and you need a level of trust. And that's what Lance brought to it. And that's how we got so many people that nobody's talked to before, because they knew that Lance was going to be the one that was going to tell this story the right way and get the right story out there. So it was really fascinating in that sense, to hear everything that was happening, and from all steps of his life, all the way back to his childhood through the boy band years, and then after the fact, the financial victims and everybody involved with that. And I think on their end, in terms of casting, a lot of people were pretty apprehensive about it, but others were genuinely interested in, not excited is the wrong word, but they were really happy that someone was finally telling their side of the story also, because they were affected in Lou in a lot of the same ways that the guys from the bands were.
To me, that was the part of the story I didn't know much about, was how he started. What was his childhood? I would hear a lot of stories from Lou about his childhood, and they were fascinating stories. But then as we started diving deeper into his real life and these actual stories, we found out it was all bullshit. He would take stories of his other friends, and he would just make them his own. And he just started building this character. And in a way, looking back at it, I feel sorry for that little kid, Lou Pearlman, because he felt he was so hated. No one liked him, that he had to create this whole new persona so that people would actually like him.
We wanted to make sure we told a story about Lou as a three-dimensional person also, that this isn't a hit piece or somebody who's just like, oh, he was purely a monster and that was it. Because when you actually talk to the people in his life, that wasn't their perception. Like, he was a complicated guy. He was jovial and fun and happy, and he made you feel really good when you were around him. He did a ton for music and for everybody's careers, but on the other side, there were a lot of dark qualities to him. And ultimately, we just wanted to make sure we display that he was this complicated figure. I think that it's good that we're in a place now where people are being allowed to speak their truths to the world. I think that that's really important, and that's something we wanted to focus on. This wasn't something that we certainly didn't want to go in with any kind of bias. The story's been told in a lot of different ways. And what we wanted to do was just allow people to speak to their experiences and not present anything that was just rumor mongering or uncorroborated or anything like that. It's really interesting that he actually started an investment scheme pre the bands, used that money to help fund the bands, and then used the bands as a carrot to get more people to invest. And eventually he was brought down both for bank fraud and investment fraud, totaling up to $500 million. and I think it was around 1,700 people had invested with him. A lot of them just retirees from Florida. So that was one of the really heartbreaking parts of making the documentary, was going through Florida. And it was really wonderful that these retirees were generous enough to give us their stories, but it was also very sad at the same time that they had lost their entire retirements, and then a lot of times had no idea what they were going to do in order to survive for the rest of their lives.
I mean, there's a few things that we want people to take away from this, and one for me, as an entertainer, a cautionary tale for any entertainer out there, especially a young entertainer and their families, to really watch what you're signing, and make sure you have a really great entertainment lawyer, and protect yourself, because in the end it is a business. Yeah, we love music, and I'd be happy singing at a coffee shop down the street, but when you enter this business, you got to realize it's a business and you have to treat it that way.
I even personally am taking away from this story the idea of making sure we aren't falling into the trap of confirmation bias, basically, in our lives, because it's something that I have too, or feedback loops, where you hear something and you want it to be true, so you don't look into it and you just start believing it. And I think that's something that I know I'm constantly falling prey to, and I have to keep checking myself, because I think it's so easy when you really want something to be true to just stop looking, stop analyzing, and just be like, yes, it's true. And I think we have to make sure that we're not doing that in our lives.